Keith had just graduated from State University with a degree in mechanical engineering. Like many recent graduates, he found himself at a crossroads, unsure of his true interests or career path. After a brief job search, he somewhat randomly accepted a position as a quality control engineer at Precision Manufacturing, a local machinery factory. On his first day, his supervisor, John, greeted him with enthusiasm. "Welcome aboard, Keith. Quality control is crucial in our industry. Every product that leaves this factory must meet exact specifications." Keith nodded politely, but internally, he felt disconnected from the work. During training sessions, his mind often wandered, and he found himself checking his phone when he thought no one was watching. Sarah, a senior quality inspector, noticed his lack of engagement. "Keith, you seem distracted. Is everything okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine," Keith replied quickly. "Just trying to get used to everything." But things weren't fine. When complex issues arose, Keith would find excuses to avoid them. If a machine showed unusual measurement variations, he'd mark it as pending review and move on to easier tasks. When production line workers asked for his input on quality issues, he'd give vague answers or say he needed to check with someone else. One day, Mike, a production line worker, approached him with concern. "Keith, these parts you approved yesterday don't meet the tolerance requirements. We had to scrap an entire batch." "Oh, I must have missed that," Keith mumbled, feeling embarrassed. The mistakes began piling up. After 2 months, John called Keith into his office. The supervisor's usually friendly face was stern. "Keith, I'm going to be direct with you," John said, leaning forward in his chair. "In the past 2 months, you've made numerous errors that have cost the company both time and money. You don't seem to understand even basic inspection procedures, and your work shows a lack of care." Keith stared at the floor, his face burning. "I'm giving you 1 more month," John continued. "If you don't show significant improvement, I'll have to let you go. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," Keith replied quietly. But instead of facing the challenge, Keith did what had become his habit. He ran away. The next day, he submitted his resignation. Over the next year, Keith went through 3 similar jobs at different companies. At each one, the pattern repeated. Initial enthusiasm, followed by disengagement when things got difficult, and finally, resignation when the pressure mounted. Then came the day that changed everything. Keith was riding the bus home after quitting his 4th job when he overheard a conversation between a father and his young son sitting nearby. "But Dad, I want to quit the basketball team," the boy was saying. "The drills are too hard, and I'm not as good as the other kids." The father's response caught Keith's attention. "Son, listen to me carefully. Life will always bring challenges. If you run away every time something gets difficult, you'll never grow. You won't develop your skills or confidence. People who avoid challenges end up limiting their opportunities and usually have to settle for less in life." Keith felt as if the man was speaking directly to him. He thought about all the times he'd quit, all the opportunities he'd wasted, all the skills he hadn't developed because he was afraid to face difficulties. The next week, Keith started a new job at Allied Electronics as a quality engineer. When his new supervisor, Ms. Thompson, showed him around, he made a conscious decision to approach things differently. "I notice you're staying late," Ms. Thompson commented one evening, finding Keith studying technical specifications. "Yes," Keith replied. "I'm having trouble understanding some of these measurement protocols, but instead of avoiding them, I'm determined to learn them properly." Ms. Thompson smiled. "That's exactly the attitude we need here." Over the next few months, Keith faced each challenge head-on. When he encountered difficult problems, he asked questions, researched solutions, and worked through them methodically. Sometimes he made mistakes, but instead of running away, he learned from them. 6 months later, Ms. Thompson called him into her office. Keith felt a familiar anxiety, but this time he didn't want to run. "Keith, I've been watching your progress," she said. "Your dedication and willingness to tackle challenges haven't gone unnoticed. We have a senior position opening up in the quality department, and I'd like you to consider applying for it." As Keith left her office, he thought about how different things might have been if he'd kept running away from challenges. For the first time in his career, he felt proud of himself and excited about the future. 单字 crossroads 十字路口 Noun a place where two roads meet and cross each other. Specification 规格规范 Noun a detailed description of how something should be done, made, etc.